Imagine for a moment the Earth not as a map or a globe or a series of borders, but as a single breathing being, a vast, ancient organism whose pulse can be felt in the shifting winds, the drifting tides, the trembling crust beneath our feet. For hundreds of thousands of years, humans have lived upon this moving surface, gathering in the places where life feels soft and familiar. We choose the gentle edges of rivers, the open plains where herds once roamed, the forests where shelter grows naturally from the ground, the coastlines where water meets land in a rhythm so steady it feels like a promise. Most of us live our entire lives within these comfortable landscapes. We build our routines around predictable seasons, predictable temperatures, predictable skies. We wake, we work, we rest, never thinking too deeply about the delicate balance that makes these environments hospitable. We forget, sometimes, that the Earth is far larger and far stranger than the small circle of comfort we inhabit. That beyond the cities and the fertile valleys and the safe shores, there are places where the world behaves differently. Places where heat presses down like a living weight, or where cold stills the air until it feels as though time itself has stopped. Places where rain falls in endless sheets, or where rain never comes at all. Places where the ground glows with volcanic fire, or where isolation stretches so far that even the horizon seems lonely. These places are not empty. People live there, quietly, stubbornly, beautifully. Their lives unfold in rhythms most of us will never experience, shaped by forces that feel almost mythical. The planet expresses its extremes in these corners, pushing the boundaries of what is possible, and yet, somehow, life persists. Not just life, but community, culture, memory. Tonight, we are going to visit 7 of these places. Not quickly, not urgently, but in a slow, drifting way, as though carried by a gentle current. We won't rush. There is no need. Instead, we'll move softly from one extreme to the next, exploring what it feels like to wake each morning in the hottest inhabited place on Earth, or the coldest, or the wettest. We'll wander through landscapes so unforgiving they seem almost unreal, and yet people call them home. In their stories, their routines, their quiet adaptations, we'll find the thread that connects all of us, the ability to adjust, to endure, to make meaning, even in the most unlikely environments. So settle in. Let your breathing slow. Let your thoughts stretch out a little farther than usual. The earth is wide and full of wonders, and tonight we will walk gently across its most extraordinary edges, beginning where heat rules every hour of the day, shaping life in ways few of us have ever imagined. In the far reaches of northeastern Africa, there is a stretch of land where the earth sinks into itself, folding downward into a basin shaped by fire and pressure. This is the Donakill Depression, a place carved by tectonic forces over millions of years, where the continent is quite literally pulling apart. When you imagine traveling there, allow the scene to unfold slowly. The land descends in gentle steps, moving from rock to salt, from salt to crust, and from crust to a kind of shimmering emptiness where the air itself seems to waver. At the center of this depression lies a place few have heard of, yet it holds a record unmatched anywhere else on the inhabited earth: Dalal. Here, the sun reigns with an unbroken intensity. Heat does more than fill the air, it shapes it. It saturates the ground, radiates from mineral surfaces, and rises in shimmering currents that distort every horizon. When people speak of heat elsewhere, they often refer to a season, a wave, a passing discomfort. In Dalal, heat is a condition of existence, a presence that has lingered for longer than memory. The temperatures here have been studied with a mix of scientific interest and quiet astonishment. Over a full year, the average hovers around 34.6 degrees Celsius, or roughly 94 degrees Fahrenheit. On many afternoons, the numbers climb far beyond that, passing 50 degrees, past 122 Fahrenheit, to reach levels where human life becomes a balance between endurance and careful adaptation. This is not the searing intensity of a desert afternoon that fades when the sun drops. Here, the heat persists. It holds its grip through the night, carried by stone and salt and the restless activity beneath the ground. The landscape reflects that restlessness. When you first look at it, your mind hesitates, because it does not resemble anything familiar. Pools of water simmer and bubble, their surfaces shifting with rising gas. Some appear turquoise, clear enough to see mineral towers beneath. Others glow yellow or green, colored by sulfur and iron, by magnesium and chlorine, by the Earth's internal chemistry reaching the surface. Crusts form around the edges in strange terraces, layering in shapes that resemble coral reefs or frozen waves. The ground feels alive even when it is still. The surface cracks and reforms, stretches and tightens. Minerals build themselves into delicate structures, then collapse under their own weight a month later. In places, thin crusts hide pools of acid strong enough to eat through clothing or skin. In others, the earth steams with the breath of magma rising from below. There is a constant awareness here that you are standing on a landscape that is being rebuilt moment by moment, as if the earth is experimenting with its own colors and textures. Every sound is amplified by the emptiness. The hiss of a vent opening beneath a mineral dome, the faint bubbling of an acidic spring, the crunch of salt underfoot. Even the wind carries the echo of heat, flowing across the plains like something with weight and intention. There are stretches where the air vibrates with the sound of its own movement, humming against the crystalline formations that surround the geothermal fields. And yet, in this environment, people have lived for as long as anyone can trace. The Afar people have called this region home for centuries, moving through it with an understanding shaped by generations of observation. Their presence here is not accidental. They learned how to read the landscape, how to exist within its extremes, and how to build a life where outsiders often see only danger. For the Afar, salt is the heart of the land. Long before modern infrastructure reached the region, salt was cut from the desert in heavy slabs, each one pried from the earth with hand tools and loaded onto camels for long journeys across the plains. These caravans traveled slowly, their pace dictated by temperature, wind, and the condition of the animals. Watching one of these caravans from a distance is like witnessing an ancient ritual. Camels walk in a patient line, their steps steady, their bodies moving through the heat as if they were made for it. The traders walk beside them with the kind of endurance that comes from a lifetime spent under an unrelenting sun. The work is difficult, requiring both precision and resilience. Blocks of salt must be shaped carefully, not only for transport, but for trade. Every motion is deliberate. There is no rushing. Haste leads to exhaustion. Instead, there is a rhythm, a slow and thoughtful way of working that fits the environment. Even the animals have learned the pace of the land, resting when the sun climbs too high, moving when the heat becomes slightly more forgiving. In many parts of the Danakil, shade is scarce. Structures are built to allow air to flow freely, made from materials that can be moved or rebuilt easily. The Afar have shaped their daily routines around the heat, rising before dawn, working while the air still holds some of the night's coolness, and retreating to rest when the sun reaches its most intense point. As evening comes, the temperature eases just enough for movement to resume, though it never becomes what most people would call cool. The body responds to such conditions in ways that feel almost instinctive. Sweating begins early in the day, not in heavy droplets, but in a steady evaporation that happens before the moisture can even gather on the skin. Clothing is chosen for breathability, not for insulation. Breathing becomes slower, deeper, as though the air must be handled with care. People learn the subtle signs of heat stress long before it becomes dangerous. Over time, their bodies adapt. Heart rate patterns shift. Blood flow changes. Fluid needs become familiar rhythms. Life in this heat requires attention. It requires listening to the body, to the land, to the wind. It requires an understanding that the environment will not bend, that survival is not achieved by conquering the heat, but by coexisting with it. Those who live in Dalo know these truths intuitively, shaped by experience and the teachings of elders. The geology beneath the region provides its own explanation for this intensity. The African and Arabian tectonic plates are pulling away from each other, creating a rift where magma rises closer to the surface. This stretching of the Earth's crust generates volcanic activity, not always in the form of eruptions, but as geothermal vents, underground heat sources, and mineral-rich springs that bubble through the crust in countless places. The landscape is dotted with signs of this activity: cones of crystallized minerals, steaming fissures, and fields of salt crust that hide thin layers of geothermal water below. It is a reminder that the planet is not static. It breathes, it shifts, it reshapes itself slowly and sometimes suddenly, revealing glimpses of its inner workings through places like Dalol. To stand here is to witness that movement in a direct and almost intimate way. The earth feels less like an object beneath your feet and more like a living system with its own rhythms and moods. Even in the midst of such extremes, there are moments of quiet beauty. At sunrise, the mineral pools reflect the light in colors that seem impossible: soft gold blending into brilliant green, turquoise deepening into shades of blue rarely seen on land. The air still holds the memory of the night, creating a delicate window before the day becomes more demanding. For a brief breath, the world feels calm, suspended between heat and stillness. In those moments, it becomes easier to understand the draw of this place. It is harsh, but also extraordinary. It challenges assumptions about what life requires. It shows the immense adaptability of human beings and the depth of knowledge that forms when people live in close relationship with the land. There is a deep respect woven into the way the Afar navigate their environment. They know which paths are safe, which mineral pools can be approached, which stretches of the desert conceal thin crusts or unstable ground. They recognize the subtle cues in the air that hint at wind shifts or rising geothermal pressure. Their knowledge is practical, but it is also cultural, a shared memory built through generations of living in the presence of the Earth's heat. As the day ends, the landscape changes again. The mineral fields catch the last light, glowing as though lit from within. Shadows stretch across the salt flats. Even then the heat remains, but its edges soften. The air grows still. The hum of distant vents becomes more noticeable. Nights in Dalol do not bring relief in the way many places do, yet they hold a gentler quiet, a sense of settling after a long stretch of intensity. It is this rhythm, harshness followed by brief softness, challenge balanced by extraordinary beauty that shapes life here. When you imagine standing in such a place, you may feel a kind of humility, an awareness of how small humans are in the face of the planet's deeper forces. But there is also something comforting in that realization. Extreme environments highlight the strength of life, its ability to find footholds in unlikely places, its willingness to adapt and persist. The heat of Dalol remains with you even as you step away from the image. It lingers like a memory of sunlight on skin, warm and steady. Carry that warmth with you as our journey shifts. Ahead lies a place where the world feels sculpted from silence and frost, where breath hangs in the air as a delicate cloud, and where the cold shapes daily life with the same authority that heat commands here. From the mineral plains and boiling springs of Dalol, we drift now toward a landscape of snow, ice, and stillness, the coldest inhabited place on Earth. There is a kind of cold that most people know only as a momentary feeling, the sharp bite of winter air on the walk from the car to the front door, or the way fingertips throb for a few minutes after being exposed to wind. That kind of cold feels temporary, something encountered and then quickly escaped. But there is another form of cold, a deeper one, a cold that settles into the very structure of a place. It doesn't come and go, it simply exists, as natural and constant as gravity. When you step into it, it doesn't sting or bite or shock. It surrounds you with a complete and overwhelming stillness, as though the air itself has forgotten how to move. To understand this kind of cold, imagine a valley in northeastern Siberia, where winter lasts for more than half the year. The landscape is quiet in a way that feels ancient. Snow smooths every surface until the hills look soft, as though carved from pale velvet. The sky often hangs low, muted, washed in colors so delicate they seem undecided, a blend of lavender, gray, and blue that shifts slowly throughout the short day. Here the sun rises reluctantly and drifts close to the horizon, sending out a faint light that seems more like a memory of warmth than a promise of heat. In this place stands a small settlement, famous for its relationship with cold.
Its recorded temperature once reached minus 67.7 degrees Celsius, a value so extreme it nearly matches the coldest readings ever measured outside Antarctica. On winter days, the average hovers around minus 50. Step outside at those temperatures and the entire world behaves differently. Breath becomes visible the instant it leaves your mouth, forming a cloud that hangs in the air far longer than seems possible. The moisture on your eyelashes crystallizes into tiny white threads within seconds. Leather stiffens, metal becomes dangerous to touch. And the silence? The silence feels complete, as though sound itself has frozen. Daily life in a place like this requires an understanding of cold that goes beyond caution. It becomes woven into every decision. Cars, for instance, cannot simply be turned off for the night. If the engine cools completely, the oil thickens until it behaves more like wax than liquid, and the entire machine becomes inert. So engines run continuously, idling through the long darkness. Locals park their vehicles in rows outside their homes, each one humming gently, sending small waves of warm air upward to carve a faint pocket of space in the surrounding cold. Children grow up within this environment, and for them these temperatures become a part of the natural order. There is a school in the valley, and its rules for closures is unlike anything seen in milder climates. Classes continue as usual until the thermometer drops below minus 52 degrees. Only at that point, when the air truly becomes dangerous to inhale for long periods, are children sent home. Below that threshold, the body's exposed moisture in the throat, in the nose, even in the lungs, risks freezing. Above it, life continues. Clothing in this region is not simply apparel, it is infrastructure. Local hunters, reindeer herders, and families wear layers of fur and wool designed to trap heat so efficiently that the air between each layer becomes part of the system. Boots are heavily insulated, sometimes with several nested linings, because the cold passes easily through solid materials. Even a thick rubber sole can transfer the temperature of frozen ground into the foot if left unprotected. Hoods are large and soft, designed not just to cover the head, but to create a dome of air around the face, protecting it from winds that can cause frostbite within minutes. People living here learn to move with deliberate calm. Sudden breaths hurt. Rushing can make the cold feel sharper. Instead, there is a rhythm to the way people walk across snow-packed streets, a quiet, steady pace that aligns with the environment. The sound of footsteps is almost muted, as though the snow absorbs each impact before it can echo.
Beneath the surface, the ground stays frozen year-round. This layer of permanently solid earth is called permafrost, and in this valley it forms a foundation that shapes everything. Homes are built on raised platforms so that the warmth generated inside doesn't seep downward and melt the ground unevenly. Water pipes are heated and insulated, running above the surface like long, pale veins across the settlement. There is no underground here. The cold does not permit it. Instead, infrastructure floats lightly on top of the land. And yet, despite these challenges, life moves with a gentle steadiness. Meals are warm, hearty, often centered around foods that provide energy in the cold. Boiled meats, broths, dumplings. Families gather close, especially during the darkest months, when the sun's arc across the sky is brief. There is comfort in routine, in shared endurance, in the knowledge that everyone in the valley understands the demands of the environment.
The cold shapes the psychology of the place as well. People speak softly of what winter feels like when the world narrows to a few essential tasks: staying warm, staying safe, staying connected. In that simplicity, there is a surprising calm. Days take on a slower cadence. The mind settles. The outside world may freeze, but inside homes, the warmth feels stronger, earned through effort and care. When storms pass and the sky clears, the air becomes so transparent it feels almost invisible. Stars appear with incredible clarity, sharp and bright, as though drawn onto a black canvas. The moon reflects off the snow, lighting the valley with a soft, bluish glow. Nights like this create a sense of stillness so deep that time seems suspended. You could stand for a long while without hearing a single sound except your own breathing. In a place where the cold can take away the familiar conveniences of modern life, where technology, engines, even simple tools struggle, people develop a kind of quiet respect for the land. The environment does not negotiate. It teaches. It demands attention. It reminds everyone who lives there of their place within the natural world. There is a moment every winter morning in this valley when the boundary between night and day becomes strangely thin. The sky begins to lighten, but the sun does not rise fully. Instead, a faint silver glow spreads across the snow, casting long shadows even though the horizon remains empty. This twilight can last for hours, stretching the concept of morning into something softer, more fluid. In this half-light, the cold feels quieter. It holds everything still, as though waiting for some ancient signal to allow the day to begin. People wake slowly. Windows are covered with frost on the inside, delicate patterns forming across the glass like frozen lace. Before stepping outside, families check the weather, not to see if the day will be cold, because that is guaranteed, but to learn just how carefully they must move through the hours. At -40 degrees, exposed skin begins to numb quickly, but can still endure brief moments of contact with the air. At -50, the risk increases dramatically. At -60, stepping outside becomes an exercise in discipline, awareness, and respect. Inside their homes, life feels surprisingly cozy. Wood stoves glow, water kettles whistle. Thick curtains help keep heat from escaping, though a constant effort is required to maintain warmth. Walls are insulated as much as the harsh climate allows, but the cold outside is so intense that it pushes inward relentlessly. Yet the sense of community is strong. Neighbors help one another start engines that refuse to cooperate. People share firewood, trade food, check on elders. There is a collective understanding that survival here is a shared responsibility. The valley teaches interdependence in the most natural way. When people do venture outside, the air feels both sharp and soft. The cold is absolute, but it does not rush at you. Instead, it sits everywhere at once, a presence that can be felt but not confronted. Breathing becomes deliberate.
During winter, the landscape transforms into a world of muted blues and grays. The forests around the valley stand perfectly still, their branches coated with frost so thick it looks like carved stone. Snowdrifts form gentle curves along the sides of buildings and fences. The river, covered by layers of ice, flows silently beneath its frozen shield. All movement slows, as though the land itself is conserving energy. Even animals adapt to this rhythm. Horses and cattle grow thick winter coats. Dogs curl up in deep straw beds. Wildlife moves quietly, leaving delicate tracks across the snow that remain undisturbed for days. One of the most remarkable features of the region is the permafrost, soil that stays frozen year-round, sometimes hundreds of meters deep. It creates a sense of solidity that cannot be found in warmer climates. But in recent years, scientists have observed subtle shifts. Warmer summers cause patches of the permafrost to soften, creating uneven ground. Buildings must be carefully monitored. Roads require constant maintenance. The land is changing, slowly but noticeably. And the people who live here feel that change in the patterns of snow, in the stability of the earth, in the timing of the seasons. Still, winter remains the defining force. The way people speak about it carries a sense of respect. They describe the cold as strong, the weather as serious, the air as clean. There is admiration in their words, an understanding that while the environment is unforgiving, it is also beautiful in its purity. The night skies reinforce that beauty. On clear evenings when the atmosphere is dry and the air is motionless, the stars shine with an intensity rarely seen elsewhere. The Milky Way stretches across the sky like a river of light. Occasionally, faint waves of green appear on the horizon, the northern lights, shimmering gently. Standing beneath them, the cold becomes almost secondary. The vastness of the universe takes precedence for a moment, and even the most frigid air feels like part of something grander. Despite the challenges of winter, the people here find moments of joy. Children slide across icy hills. Families gather for long meals. Stories are told around warm tables. When the cold is a constant backdrop, even small comforts gain significance. A cup of hot tea becomes a ritual. A warm room feels sacred. There is something meditative about this way of life. The cold strips away distractions. It clarifies priorities. It teaches patience, presence, and acceptance. People who live here speak of winter not as an obstacle, but as a teacher. It shapes their character, their habits, their understanding of resilience. And then, slowly, the season begins to shift. The days lengthen. The air softens, though only slightly at first. Snow starts to melt around the edges of buildings. Roads emerge from beneath their white coverings. The cold loosens its grip in a gradual, graceful retreat. When spring finally arrives, it feels almost miraculous. Birds return. Rivers awaken. The world regains color. After months of living in shades of blue, the appearance of green feels astonishing. Flowers bloom quickly, as though making up for lost time. The land becomes vibrant, alive, energetic. But even in this warmth, the memory of winter remains. It gives the thaw a sense of depth, a feeling that every moment of softness is something precious. As we leave this valley behind, it's easy to carry with us a sense of reverence for the people who call it home, people who greet each day with quiet strength, who understand the language of cold, who live in harmony with a climate that demands attention and care. From this frozen place, the journey now moves somewhere very different, a landscape where water is not held in ice, but falls from the sky in endless abundance, shaping life through constant motion rather than stillness. When people speak of rain, they often imagine passing showers, the soft patter on a rooftop, or the scent of a quick summer storm rolling across a familiar landscape. But in the hills of northeastern India, in a quiet village tucked between deep green ridges, rain is not an event. It is the atmosphere, the rhythm, the backdrop to consciousness itself. In Masanram, rainfall is so constant, so abundant, that it shapes everything from architecture to language, from the way people walk to the way stories are told. Here, rain doesn't simply fall, it arrives with purpose, sculpting the land and its culture over thousands of years. The first thing a visitor notices isn't the sight of the rain, but the sound of it, a sound not quite like a storm, yet more than a drizzle. It has depth, layers, and a kind of rhythm that changes gently throughout the day. At times it feels like a chorus of soft drumming on leaves. At others it becomes a low, steady hum, the way distant waves might sound if the sea were hidden behind a forest. This rain has presence. It fills the air completely, wrapping everything in a cool silver-blue atmosphere that feels both soothing and ancient. This village receives an average of about 467 inches of rain each year. To imagine what that means, consider that global rainfall averages hover around 39 inches. The difference is vast, like comparing a puddle to a lake. It's difficult to grasp until you're standing on one of the narrow mountain paths, watching clouds drift so low they brush the rooftops. Days pass with the sky sinking down to earth, hiding the sun behind thick curtains of mist. Even during moments when the rain lightens, the air remains heavy with moisture, tasting faintly of moss and distant thunder. The geography explains much of this astonishing climate. The region is shaped by steep ridges that rise abruptly from the plains of Assam. When the summer monsoon flows inland from the Bay of Bengal, it carries massive quantities of warm, moisture-rich air. As this air meets the slopes of the Khasi Hills where Masanram is perched, it is forced upward, cooling rapidly. And cooled air cannot hold the same amount of moisture, so it releases it hour after hour, day after day, in a downpour that feels almost endless. Some describe the Khasi Hills as nature's own funnel, capturing clouds and guiding them upward until they release everything they carry. The ridges act like the curved walls of a bowl that catches storms rather than letting them pass by. When the monsoon is strongest, clouds seem to anchor themselves to the land, drifting slowly against the slopes as though reluctant to move on. The result is a landscape that is always damp, always green, always shrouded in shifting layers of fog. Life in this environment moves at a different tempo. During peak monsoon months, the world becomes soft and blurred. Paths transform into streams. Village roofs echo with constant percussion. Laundry takes days to dry. On many mornings, people step outside into an air so thick with mist that visibility shrinks to just a few meters. The ground shines with moisture, moss climbing over stones, bamboo, and tree roots in vivid shades of emerald. Umbrellas are familiar sight, but not the lightweight fabric ones found in city streets. Here, many are woven from bamboo and banana leaves, sturdy enough to withstand hours of uninterrupted rain. They are shaped almost like conical shields, draping down past the shoulders, allowing villagers to walk without needing to grip anything in their hands. These umbrellas are more than tools. They are part of the region's cultural identity, a practical response to the weather that also carries tradition and craftsmanship.
And then there are the living root bridges, perhaps the most remarkable expression of harmony between humans and nature found anywhere on Earth. Deep in the rain-soaked valleys, ancient rubber fig trees grow along riverbanks. Their roots, strong and flexible, are guided by the Khasi people across streams using hollowed-out betel nut trunks as channels. Over time, decades in many cases, these roots strengthen, thicken, and fuse together. What began as a careful weaving of young tendrils eventually becomes a fully grown bridge capable of supporting dozens of people at once.
These living structures are grown, not built. They carry the weight of generations, quite literally. A bridge started by elders may not fully mature until long after they have passed on, cared for by children who learned from them. Some bridges are already several centuries old, still expanding, still alive. During the heaviest rains, when rivers surge with incredible force and temporary wooden bridges would be swept away, these root bridges hold firm. They offer not only safe passage, but a powerful symbol of patience and collaboration between humans and their environment. To walk across one is to feel the presence of time layered beneath your feet. In such an environment, culture naturally bends toward the rain. The Khasi people, who have lived here for countless generations, developed traditions that reflect an understanding of their landscape's gifts and challenges. They build structures on raised stone platforms to keep indoor spaces dry. Roofs are slanted steeply to direct water away quickly. Walls are often coated with limestone and clay, creating surfaces that resist moisture better than untreated wood. Even daily schedules adjust to the rhythm of the rain, with many tasks planned around the brief pauses between downpours. Food, too, takes on patterns shaped by the climate. Rice, ginger, turmeric, and broomgrass thrive in the damp soil. Villagers gather wild mushrooms during the rainy season, carefully identifying the varieties known to be safe. Fermented foods are valued both for their flavor and for their ability to store well in humid conditions. Inside kitchens, the warmth of wood fires mixes with the sound of rain drumming on rooftops, creating a kind of cozy counterpoint to the wet world outside. Despite the rain's constant presence, life here is not dominated by hardship. Instead, it carries a sense of peaceful continuity. People adapt with a calm acceptance that feels almost meditative. Children run along narrow paths, splashing in puddles. Farmers tend terraced fields that glow with new shoots after every rainfall. And elders sit in sheltered spaces, watching the clouds roll across the hills as they have for a lifetime. The more you stay in Masan Ram, the more you begin to understand that rain doesn't interrupt life here. It shapes it. It choreographies it. During the height of the monsoon, when the clouds sit so low they seem to rest on the rooftops, the world feels wrapped in a thin, cool veil. The fog is so dense it becomes something you move through like a physical substance, brushing against it with your hands as if parting soft curtains. Paths appear and vanish. Houses emerge from the whiteness like memories returning. Inside, families gather around warm meals that carry the fragrance of turmeric, ginger, and fermented bamboo shoots. Steam rises from the pots and mingles with the mist drifting in from the open windows. The line between indoors and outdoors blurs a little, as if the house breathes with the rain. Conversations slow, footsteps soften. Life becomes quieter, but never dull. Here, slowness is not an inconvenience, it is a rhythm.
one that has existed for generations. The rain also governs agriculture. Fields soak up the endless water, and farmers time their crops not by the calendar, but by the changing moods of the monsoon. Some seasons bring gentle, consistent showers that nourish the land. Others deliver unrelenting downpours that test patience and resourcefulness. The people of Mawsynram have learned to read subtle hints, the direction of a cloud's drift, the sound of distant thunder, the scent of the earth when the first drops hit it. These are signals passed down like family stories. Even the architecture adapts. Houses sit on raised stilts or strong stone bases so that water flows beneath instead of pushing its way inside. Roofs are sloped sharply, almost exaggeratedly, to shed torrents of rain in one clean motion. Walls are coated in materials that can withstand constant moisture, and windows are made small to minimize the force of the downpours. It's a style shaped entirely by environment, practical, resilient, and quietly beautiful. Yet the most extraordinary examples of adaptation are without question the living root bridges. To see one in person feels like stumbling upon something out of myth. The bridges aren't built, they're grown. The Hasi people plant the roots of Ficus elastica trees on opposite sides of rivers. Then over years, sometimes decades, they guide the roots across the water using hollowed-out trunks of erica palm, bamboo scaffolding, or carefully placed stones. The roots grow and strengthen, weaving themselves into natural archways that thicken with every season. Children walk across roots their grandparents shaped, while the next generation tends the new tendrils stretching outward toward the opposite bank.
A living root bridge is never finished. It evolves, responding to weather, soil, and time itself. Each layer of root growth is a physical record of patience. And because the bridges grow stronger with age rather than deteriorating, they can last centuries. When you stand on one, feeling the slight give under your feet and the pulse of flowing water beneath, you sense a quiet humility. Nature and humans working together, not in competition, but in a slow, thoughtful partnership. For visitors, it might feel extraordinary. For locals, it's simply the way things are done. The rain teaches endurance. The land teaches cooperation. And the bridges teach that some solutions can only be achieved when generations share the same long breath. Culture, too, takes its cues from the rain. Traditional Khasi music often mimics the sound of water. Stories passed down through elders reference ancient storms and cloud spirits. Festivals celebrate the shifting seasons, and people gather indoors to sing or recite folk tales while rain taps steadily on the roof above, almost as if it's listening. Clothing adapts as well. The bamboo and banana leaf umbrellas, known as noops, are wide, almost shield-like, covering most of the body. Children wear tiny versions, waddling through puddles like little turtles, barely visible beneath the curved shells. Adults carry their noops not only for rain, but for walking through low-hanging clouds that cling to the hillsides. There is something grounding about these handmade tools, simple, natural, and perfectly suited to the environment. Despite the near-constant rainfall, people still move through their days, going to school, tending animals, fetching water, visiting neighbors. The weather is never dramatic to them. It is simply omnipresent. The rain becomes the background soundscape of life, the same way the hum of a refrigerator or the distant murmur of traffic might be elsewhere.
And when the clouds finally break, even for a moment, sunlight spills onto the wet earth like a surprise guest arriving early. The hills shimmer, trees sparkle as if dipped in glass. Children rush outdoors to feel the heat, even if it lasts only a few minutes. These moments of brightness are fleeting but meaningful, the way a soft page break gives you space to breathe before a new chapter begins. From a scientific perspective, the sheer amount of rainfall here is astounding. The global average annual rainfall is about 39 inches. Mawsynram receives 467 inches, 12 times that. And while heavy rainfall occurs in places like Colombia or Hawaii, nowhere else matches the intensity, consistency, and geography that funnel moisture so precisely into this small region of northeast India. This abundance of water shapes not only the ecosystem, but the psychology of its people. To live in a place where nature expresses itself so loudly, so persistently, teaches acceptance. You cannot fight the monsoon. You cannot negotiate with it. You can only move with it, adapt to it, learn from it. Many Khasi elders describe the rain as a companion, sometimes generous, sometimes demanding, always present. Children grow up learning to respect it rather than fear it. As night arrives, the rain softens, but rarely stops. The sound becomes a blanket, smooth and even. It's easy to imagine drifting to sleep here, lulled by the endless rhythm of water on earth. Time stretches, thoughts slow. There is a quiet recognition that in a place like this, the world is shaped drop by drop, year after year, in a language written by weather. And eventually, as the monsoon season fades into drier months, life shifts again. The air grows clearer. Hills emerge sharply from the mist. The landscape becomes more defined, revealing paths and distant villages that were hidden before. But the rain is never completely gone. It lingers in the soil, in the roots of the bridges, in the stories people tell. It returns, as it always does, carrying with it the patient rhythm that defines this corner of the world. When you finally imagine stepping away from Mawsynram, whether physically or in thought, the constant rainfall stays with you for a moment longer, echoing like a memory that refuses to dissolve. And then, gently, the sound of water begins to fade. Ahead lies the next extreme, a place where rain is not a companion, but a stranger. A place where the sky rarely opens and the ground waits endlessly for water that almost never arrives. A land shaped not by abundance, but by absence.
The Atacama Desert stretches across northern Chile as a land of extremes, a place where silence has weight and emptiness feels tangible. To enter it is to enter a different kind of world, one defined not by the abundance of life or water, but by their absence. The landscape is vast, angular, and sun-bleached, a tapestry of ochre, rust, and pale gray that stretches beyond the horizon. Dust and gravel dominate, broken only by salt flats that sparkle under the sun, or by the occasional jagged mountain range rising like dark sentinels. In many places, water has not fallen in centuries. The ground is so dry that even the air seems to shimmer with suspended dust. Every step leaves a mark that may remain visible for days or weeks, untouched by rain or wind. Some areas of the Atacama receive less than a single millimeter of rainfall per year. Certain valleys may have gone over 500 years without a verified drop of rain. In this environment,
Dryness is not simply a condition, it is a pervasive force, a silence that shapes everything. The desert is formed at the intersection of natural phenomena. The rain shadow of the Andes, which blocks moisture from the Amazon, and the coastal range, which traps what little condensation might drift inland from the Pacific. Cold ocean currents running north along the Chilean coast further suppress rainfall, chilling the air and preventing clouds from forming. The result is a plateau that seems almost designed to exclude life, a place where the rules of habitability are stretched to their limits. The chemistry of the Atacama soil is another mark of extremity. Salt-rich crusts, boron, nitrates, and other minerals accumulate over millennia. In some regions, the ground resembles the regolith of Mars so closely that NASA and ESA have tested rover prototypes here, assessing their ability to traverse alien landscapes. It is one of the few places on Earth where humans can practice exploration on a planet yet to be visited. Microbial life does exist, but only in the smallest pockets where moisture and nutrients happen to concentrate. These extremophiles cling invisibly to tiny crevices or salt deposits, revealing the faint persistence of life in conditions most organisms would find uninhabitable. Despite the apparent barrenness, human presence exists here, shaped by necessity and industry. Mining towns dot the desert, ghostly remnants of copper, lithium, and nitrate extraction. Some are thriving operations, others are abandoned, drifting with the wind like forgotten memories. Buildings stand isolated, their metal roofs catching sunlight, their walls bleached by decades of ultraviolet exposure. The air is dry enough that even wood and stone remain largely intact despite the harsh conditions. Life here requires preparation, resilience, and an understanding of how to exist without the support of water, without the comfort of vegetation, without the rhythm of rainfall to guide the day. Even in such an arid environment, there is a surprising intimacy with the sky. The Atacama is home to some of the clearest night skies on Earth. With almost no light pollution and minimal moisture, stars appear sharp and dense. The Milky Way stretches across the heavens in an impossibly vivid arc, each constellation crisp, every planet visible as a distinct point of light. Astronomers have built observatories in the desert's high-altitude plains, taking advantage of the clarity to study the cosmos. Here, the emptiness of the land below mirrors the expansiveness of the sky above. The absence of water and vegetation focuses attention upward, where the universe unfolds in its vastness. Walking through the desert feels like stepping into a space shaped by extremes. Silence is profound. The wind moves occasionally, brushing against salt flats, carrying fine particles across the barren valleys, but it does not disturb the stillness. Your footsteps echo softly, and then are swallowed entirely by the immensity around you. Colors seem sharper in the clarity of the dry air. Shadows are hard-edged and deep. The sun is relentless, yet strangely forgiving in its brilliance. It illuminates every detail without the haze that often softens landscapes elsewhere.
In mining towns, life adjusts to the environment with subtle precision. Water must be carefully stored, recycled, and rationed. Food is adapted to dryness and long-term storage. Solar energy, wind, and occasional fog collection systems are harnessed to sustain small communities. The rhythm of life here is slower, measured, dictated not by external conveniences but by the necessities of survival. Even the smallest gestures, sweeping dust from a doorstep, repairing a roof, checking a water tank, become essential acts of care and persistence. The desert also teaches a kind of patience. Plants that do exist, such as hardy shrubs, cacti, and salt-tolerant grasses, grow slowly, often dormant for years, waiting for the rare moments when moisture appears. Life here is not urgent, it is deliberate, deliberate in its timing, deliberate in its endurance. Observing the desert evokes a sense of scale. Time stretches differently when water is absent. Every drop, every seed, every movement feels significant. And yet, the emptiness carries a form of beauty that is understated but undeniable. Vast salt flats mirror the sky, creating illusions of infinite space. Hills and ridges cast long shadows in the soft light of dawn and dusk. Minerals stain the soil in subtle patterns of gold, rust, and violet, forming a muted mosaic that contrasts with the monochrome sky. In these colors and textures, the desert speaks quietly of its ancient history, of tectonic shifts and volcanic activity, of millennia of wind and sun shaping the land. As evening approaches, the Atacama's silence deepens. The heat of the day gradually fades, leaving behind a cool clarity that feels almost sacred. Shadows lengthen across salt flats and gravel plains, tracing every ridge and depression in stark contrast. The desert's stillness becomes more profound, as if it holds its breath in anticipation of nightfall. Even the wind, which occasionally sweeps across the landscape, softens to a whisper. There is a sense that the desert is listening, observing, and waiting, shaping an environment that demands attention through subtlety rather than noise. The night sky is perhaps the most striking feature of this extremity. Without clouds, without humidity, without the distraction of human light, the stars come alive. The Milky Way stretches in a brilliant band from horizon to horizon. Constellations appear sharper than any telescope lens could produce in more humid regions. Planets glow steadily, and meteors, streaking across the heavens, leave brief but dazzling impressions. For astronomers, the Atacama offers unparalleled clarity, a natural observatory where the universe seems both near and infinite. For anyone standing alone on a salt flat, it is an experience that evokes awe and introspection, a quiet reminder of humanity's smallness amid cosmic scale. In such a place, life is measured differently. The people who remain in the desert do so with intention. Water is precious, movement is deliberate, each day is planned around the sparse resources available. Mining operations for copper and lithium require infrastructure capable of withstanding extreme dryness, and communities around these industries develop in careful response to their environment. Electricity and water must be conserved, solar energy is harnessed efficiently, and transport is planned meticulously. Small acts, checking water tanks, maintaining windbreaks, monitoring soil, carry weight, teaching residents patience, foresight, and resilience. Ghost towns scattered across the desert tell stories of human effort and abandonment. Some were built during mineral booms, only to be deserted when resources dried up or prices fell. Buildings now stand partially collapsed, their walls bleached by the sun, windows empty, doors swaying in the occasional gust of wind. Dust covers floors and furniture, and floors of abandoned homes crack in the relentless dryness. In these places, the desert's extremity is evident not just in the absence of rainfall, but in the persistence of its silence.
The wind moves through empty streets like a quiet visitor, stirring memories long forgotten. Even in decay, there is a strange beauty, shapes and textures sharpened by dryness, shadows etched with precision, a landscape stripped of extraneous detail.
Amidst this apparent desolation, the desert supports life in hidden, often microscopic ways. Extremophiles survive in soil pockets where rare moisture collects. Some bacteria metabolize salts and minerals, revealing that even the harshest conditions cannot entirely exclude life. Researchers have discovered microbial colonies that thrive in soil chemically similar to Martian regolith, proving that life is remarkably adaptable. These organisms persist unseen, a quiet testament to endurance in extreme conditions. They remind us that presence does not always need to be visible to be real, and that survival is a story written not in grand gestures, but in minute, ongoing processes. Even human settlements, sparse as they are, display a harmony with the desert's rhythm. Houses are built with high thermal mass to retain warmth during the freezing nights, with ventilation systems that manage daytime heat. Residents grow small gardens near rare water sources, cultivating hardy vegetables and herbs. Water collection is strategic, sometimes capturing condensation from the rare coastal fogs that drift inland. Every aspect of life here is shaped by limitation, teaching mindfulness and careful planning. In these constraints, creativity and resilience flourish. People live not by convenience, but by attention, learning from the land's patience, mirroring its endurance in their daily routines. Walking through the Atacama at dawn is an experience in stillness and contemplation. The sky gradually changes from ink blue to soft pastels, casting a gentle light over dry riverbeds, salt pans, and jagged hills. Shadows shift slowly, elongating across the plains. There is almost no sound except for the occasional bird or the faint stirring of the wind against sand and stone. Each step taken feels deliberate, measured. The ground resists moisture, the air resists compression. Even movement becomes an exercise in mindfulness, a careful negotiation with the extremes of the environment. Yet this emptiness carries a form of beauty that is difficult to describe. Salt flats reflect sunlight with subtle brilliance. Minerals embedded in the soil create muted patterns of gold, copper, and violet. Mountains, shaped by tectonic uplift and erosion over millions of years, rise in stark relief against the sky. The harshness of the desert teaches an appreciation for subtle textures and fine distinctions. Where other landscapes rely on lushness or abundance for their effect, the Atacama relies on clarity, contrast, and extremity. It is a place that sharpens the senses and quiets the mind, a landscape both unyielding and meditative. As night returns, temperatures drop sharply, and the desert transforms again. The dry air chills rapidly, causing every breath to feel crisp and tactile. Stars dominate the heavens, mirrored faintly in salt flats and reflective minerals. Silence deepens, broken only by the faint whisper of wind. It is a world in which absence itself becomes a presence, a space to feel, observe, and reflect. In this emptiness, the mind slows, thoughts drift naturally, and the passage of time seems to stretch. Life in the Atacama is an ongoing dialogue with the extremes of the planet. Here, survival requires awareness, adaptation, and respect for conditions far beyond human control. Yet within those constraints lies wonder. The land's silence, its crystalline air, and its startling clarity of sky and terrain create an environment that is both challenging and profoundly beautiful. It is a lesson in patience, endurance, and the subtle power of scarcity. One can learn quietly from the desert's rhythm and form, its stark, honest presence. As dawn approaches again, the desert seems poised between past and future, between light and darkness, between emptiness and life. The Atacama does not demand attention, it offers it quietly. Observing it,
Walking through it, existing even briefly in its vastness, teaches a calm mindfulness. It reminds us that extreme environments, though harsh, hold lessons about resilience, adaptation, and respect for the quiet persistence of life in all forms. And as you leave this land in thought or imagination, its silence lingers, preparing the mind for the next extreme, where the danger comes not from dryness or cold, but from the heat and fury of molten earth itself.
Volcanoes have a presence unlike any other force on Earth. They are alive in a sense that transcends life as we usually understand it. They breathe heat and gas, release smoke and molten rock, and pulse with an energy both terrifying and mesmerizing. To stand near one is to feel the planet's pulse beneath your feet, to sense the slow rhythm of creation and destruction intertwined. In Vanuatu, an archipelago in the South Pacific, this rhythm is never far from daily life. Mount Yasura, perched on Tanna Island, has erupted nearly continuously for over 8 centuries, a fiery testament to the persistence of geological forces. The lava flows, ash clouds, and occasional explosions are not anomalies. They are the landscape itself, shaped and maintained by the constant movement of Earth's interior. The region lies along the Pacific Ring of Fire, a vast horseshoe of tectonic activity encircling the Pacific Ocean. Here, 75% of the world's active volcanoes reside, and about 90% of earthquakes occur. Plates grind and shift, subduct and collide, creating mountains, islands, and fissures across the ocean floor. For humans who live in this zone, geological activity is not distant or abstract. It is immediate, tangible, a part of the air, the soil, and the sky. In Vanuatu, volcanic activity dictates where people build their homes, how they cultivate crops, and when they choose to celebrate festivals. The planet's molten heartbeat is entwined with human rhythms in ways that feel both ancient and intimate. Mount Yasur itself is a spectacle of elemental power. The lava lake within the crater glows in deep reds and oranges, a molten mirror that churns and bubbles continuously. Small explosions throw molten rock into the air, while sulfurous plumes curl into the sky, carrying a pungent, acrid scent that permeates the nearby villages. From a distance, the mountain appears serene, puffs of smoke drifting lazily against the sky, but approaching it reveals its constant restlessness. The earth vibrates subtly beneath your feet, a reminder that even in moments of apparent calm, energy is always building, always moving. For the people who live on Tanna and nearby islands, this is home. Coastal villages are built with knowledge that ash will fall periodically, that tremors will shake buildings, and that the sea may rise unexpectedly after a strong quake. Homes are constructed with materials resilient to these forces, often using local wood, bamboo, and palm, designed to bend rather than break. Paths are marked with natural landmarks rather than rigid roads, so when ash or lava temporarily alters the landscape, people can still navigate safely. Daily life exists alongside danger, not in denial of it. Children play under skies occasionally darkened by ash, farmers tend fields that smell faintly of sulfur, and fishermen read the waves with a sense attuned to both ocean and earth. Indigenous traditions reflect a profound understanding of this relationship. The people of Vanuatu speak of volcanic spirits, guardians of the land, whose moods are expressed in the mountain's activity. Rituals, dances, and offerings are conducted to honor these forces and to seek protection from their destructive potential. Observing the environment closely becomes a form of science and spirituality. Ash plumes are red for changes in direction and density.
The rumble of the mountain is interpreted in subtle patterns, a language of vibrations that indicates when the mountain is settling or gathering force. The sulfurous scent is noted for shifts in intensity, signaling that magma is rising closer to the surface. Life in these villages depends on a nuanced awareness, an intimate knowledge of the signals emitted by the volcano itself. The relationship between danger and home is complex. Villagers rarely see themselves as passive observers. They live in constant dialogue with the land, making choices that balance respect for the mountain's power with the necessities of daily life. Schools, markets, and ceremonial spaces are positioned carefully, often on slightly elevated or stable ground. Yet the proximity to Mount Yasur is also a source of awe and identity. The fiery presence on the horizon defines the island's character, providing a sense of place that is vivid and unforgettable. Visitors may feel fear or fascination. Locals live with a calm acceptance that the extraordinary is ordinary, that the mountain's moods are as routine as the rising and setting of the sun. Beyond Vanuatu, the Ring of Fire hosts countless similar experiences. In Indonesia, Japan, and the Aleutian Islands, communities live with volcanoes that have been erupting for centuries or millennia. Each eruption, each tremor adds a layer to the cultural and historical narrative. Art, song, architecture, and daily practices reflect a constant negotiation with molten energy. People observe, adapt, and integrate these forces into the fabric of life. There is no hurry, no dramatic panic in the rhythm of adaptation. It is a slow, continuous process, a dialogue between human patience and planetary dynamism.
From a scientific perspective, lava lakes like Yasur's are remarkable. These pools of molten rock sit within craters, constantly renewed as fresh magma rises from the Earth's interior, while cooler surfaces form a thin crust. The surface breaks intermittently in minor explosions, releasing gas and molten fragments. Lava lakes provide a live window into the mechanics of volcanic activity. Geologists can measure temperature, chemical composition, and movement, learning about the dynamics that occur deep underground. Yet even with modern instruments, the unpredictability of the mountain persists, a reminder that human understanding is always partial and that nature operates on scales both immense and intimate. In Vanuatu's coastal regions, life also contends with secondary hazards. Volcanic ash can settle on crops, alter soil chemistry, and affect fresh water sources. Tremors, frequent though rarely catastrophic, shape building codes and household habits. Tsunamis generated by seismic activity have influenced sediment patterns for generations. In response, communities have developed early warning strategies rooted in observation, oral knowledge, and traditional practices, blending modern science with ancestral wisdom. The result is a society that is resilient, attuned, and deeply respectful of the forces around it. The experience of living here is a lesson in mindfulness. Every sense is engaged, the vibrations beneath the ground, the heat radiating from molten rock, the sulfur's sharp tang in the air, the sight of glowing lava reflecting in dusk or dawn. Life is measured by careful observation, by patience, by the understanding that immediate gratification or impulse can be hazardous. In this extreme environment, awareness itself becomes a form of protection and a way of connecting with the living planet. As the day fades, Mount Yasur glows brighter against the darkening sky. Lava fountains flicker like slow-moving constellations. Ash drifts lazily in the twilight, and the distant rumble reverberates through the air. Villages settle into the evening, with fires burning safely in small hearths, meals prepared in quiet rhythm, and stories told of ancestors who walked the same paths in the shadow of the volcano. There is comfort here, paradoxically, in proximity to danger. The mountain's constancy, its predictability in unpredictability, creates a framework within which life continues, calm and deliberate. And so the presence of fire shapes everything: identity, architecture, agriculture, and belief. The danger is constant but measured. The lessons of observation, adaptation, and respect for elemental power extend across generations. In this volcanic zone, the relationship between people and earth is not one of dominion, but of coexistence. There is beauty in the glowing lava, in the rhythm of eruptions, in the way communities thrive alongside molten energy, and in the subtle awareness that humans can live in intimate proximity with forces far larger than themselves. Ahead, the journey continues to another extreme, where danger is less fiery and more isolating, where the greatest challenge comes from solitude, remoteness, and the sheer weight of being alone in the world. Night deepens over Vanuatu, and the glow of Mount Yasur continues unabated, casting an orange reflection across the clouds. The mountain's presence seems to pulse with a rhythm all its own, almost breathing. From a distance, the eruptions appear dramatic, but up close, there is a quiet constancy, a steady, measured energy that fills the air without haste. Smoke rises, curling and twisting in delicate patterns that respond to wind and temperature, forming shapes that vanish as soon as they appear. It is a reminder that even in apparent chaos, nature moves with precision all its own. In villages near the volcano, life slows in tandem with evening. Families gather in open courtyards, sharing food and conversation. Children run along paths dusted with ash, their laughter echoing softly, but never drowning out the distant tremors of the mountain. Elders sit quietly, observing the volcano and the people around them, reading signs in the shifting plumes, listening to the murmurs of the earth. Knowledge of the volcano is passed orally, in stories and rituals, each generation learning to read patterns imperceptible to outsiders. The mountain teaches patience and attention, an education in survival and harmony that comes from living side by side with a force far greater than oneself. The ash that occasionally settles on the land is not simply a hazard, it is also part of life's rhythm. It colors the soil, influences crop growth, and becomes part of the sensory landscape, gritty underfoot, soft in the air, pungent on the wind.
Farmers adjust planting schedules, selecting crops resilient to occasional fallout. Water collection and storage must account for contamination. Even travel through the region is measured, with routes chosen to avoid ash-covered paths or unstable slopes. Every aspect of daily life is influenced by the volcano, requiring constant adaptation. Yet within these adaptations there is also beauty. The ash gives the land a muted palette, softening edges and blending the horizon with the sky, creating scenes of quiet, understated artistry. Visitors often focus on the spectacle of molten rock and erupting flames, but for those who live here, the experience is more nuanced. The mountain is a companion, not a threat in everyday life. It commands attention, certainly, but that attention is exercised with familiarity rather than fear. Ash clouds are observed and noted, tremors are felt and measured, changes in sulfur scent are interpreted. Each observation informs daily choices, from where to build a shelter to when to harvest crops, from selecting safe routes to preparing communal rituals. Danger is woven into the fabric of life so seamlessly that coexistence becomes second nature. Observing Mount Yasur's lava lake is a study in continuous transformation.
Magma rises from deep within the earth, forming a glowing pool that churns, bubbles, and occasionally spouts fountains of molten rock. Thin crusts form on the surface, breaking and folding back into the lake as new lava arrives. Each eruption, each tremor is part of a larger, ongoing process. Scientists monitor these phenomena to understand volcanic mechanics, yet for local residents, the lake is both a practical and spiritual presence. Its glow at night illuminates paths and fields, and its activity becomes part of the rhythm of life, reminding all who live nearby of the balance between creation and destruction. The Ring of Fire stretches across the Pacific, and the lessons of Vanuatu resonate across its scope. From Indonesia to Japan to the Aleutians, human communities learn to coexist with extremes, observing and interpreting, adapting and enduring. Rituals, architecture, and daily practice all reflect a dialogue between humanity and the restless earth. There is no hurry, no rush, no attempt to dominate the environment. Instead, life unfolds in measured awareness, shaped by observation and respect. Danger is present, but it is contextualized, framed by knowledge, and integrated into the rhythms of existence. Even in moments of apparent calm, the land remains alive. Smoke drifts lazily, and small tremors ripple through the ground, barely perceptible to the attentive observer. Birds fly over lava fields, unbothered by the glow below. Trees and shrubs grow in volcanic soils enriched by centuries of eruptions, producing fruits, nuts, and vegetation that sustain local populations. Life persists, adapting to the extremity of the environment, learning to coexist with energy that could easily destroy it. There is a resilience here, quiet and deliberate, embedded in both the land and the people who inhabit it. As night deepens, the lava lake's glow intensifies against the black sky. Stars above shine sharply, unbroken by clouds or city lights. The contrast of fire and night creates a scene simultaneously intense and calming. Observers may find themselves mesmerized, drawn into the slow, continuous pulse of the volcano, feeling a connection to the geological forces shaping the world beneath them. It is an intimacy rarely found elsewhere, a direct relationship between human awareness and the living, breathing energy of the earth. The interplay of danger, beauty, and continuity defines life in this volcanic zone. There is a paradoxical comfort in proximity to something so powerful, a rhythm that integrates daily human activity with the mountain's pulse. Rituals are performed, crops are tended, homes are built, all within a framework that acknowledges the persistent presence of fire. Danger is never absent, yet life persists. In this space, observation, patience, and respect become the most vital skills, and understanding the environment is a form of both survival and connection. As dawn approaches, Mount Yasur continues its slow, glowing dance. The sky shifts from deep indigo to pale pink, highlighting the contours of lava flows and ash-covered slopes. Villagers rise to meet the day, following routines guided by both human and geological rhythms. Fires are lit, water is fetched, children prepare for school, farmers check fields. All these activities occur with the quiet awareness that the mountain is present, always moving, always alive. The danger is constant, but integrated into the fabric of life, shaping perception, behavior, and culture without overwhelming it. And so, in Vanuatu and along the Ring of Fire, the presence of molten energy teaches a form of coexistence rare in the modern world. Humans learn to read the subtle signals of the volcano, to respect its power, and to live alongside it without fear or denial. Danger is acknowledged, but tempered by awareness and adaptation. Beauty emerges in glowing lava, rhythmic eruptions, and the quiet integration of life with forces far beyond human control. There is a calm in this awareness, a meditative understanding that extremes can be part of life's ongoing rhythm, shaping culture, identity, and perception. Ahead, the journey continues to another extreme, where danger is less fiery and more intangible, a place where isolation, solitude, and the quiet pressure of remoteness define the environment, and where the greatest challenge is the sheer weight of being alone in the world.
Tristan da Cunha rises from the South Atlantic like a solitary thought in an immense deep blue expanse. From a distance, it appears almost unreal, jagged volcanic cliffs piercing the horizon, waves lashing against rocky shores, and the wind moving in patterns that seem older than memory. It is a place that exists beyond most maps, beyond most human schedules, beyond the immediacy of everyday life. Isolation here is not merely a condition, it is a form of quiet, a space where distance protects, where the ordinary pressures of modern life dissipate into the endless sea. To arrive is to be embraced by solitude, a slow, deliberate detachment from the rhythm of the continents. The island itself is small, less than 10 square miles, but every inch is sculpted by centuries of volcanic activity, wind, and ocean. Its population is roughly 250 people, descendants of settlers, sailors, and individuals who chose a life far removed from the world's urgency. There is no airport, no immediate connection to anywhere else. A boat journey from Cape Town takes 6 to 10 days, crossing the South Atlantic's vast and often unforgiving waters. Weather dictates much of life here. Storms can delay arrival or departure, keeping the island suspended in its own quiet timeline. The sea itself becomes both boundary and companion, a constant presence that marks days with tides and waves, and nights with the sound of its distant roar against cliff and shore. Life on Tristan da Cunha moves with a rhythm dictated by necessity and communal effort. Supplies arrive infrequently, carried by ships that follow careful schedules dictated by both wind and ocean currents. Residents learn to plan months in advance, anticipating needs for food, medical supplies, and fuel. There is little room for last-minute errands. Every action requires thought, coordination, and patience. The communal nature of life is woven deeply into the social fabric. Farming, fishing, and maintenance of shared spaces are not simply tasks, they are acts of participation in a delicate balance that sustains the community. Each person contributes, knowing that their effort affects not just themselves, but every neighbor and relative. The volcanic soil of the island supports small-scale farming and grazing. Potatoes, vegetables, and livestock provide staples, supplemented by fish and seafood harvested from the surrounding ocean. Gardens are tended with care, adapted to the island's wind patterns, volcanic rock, and salt-laden air. Structures are built to withstand constant gusts and occasional storms, often reinforced with stone, timber, and ingenuity born of necessity. Every building, path, and garden is a manifestation of adaptation to extremes, a human response to isolation.
Even recreation reflects this. Hikes across cliffs, swimming in sheltered coves, and simple gatherings for music and storytelling create a shared sense of life in a place removed from the rush of the wider world. Historical events have shaped Tristan da Cunha in ways that highlight the duality of isolation. In 1961, the island's volcanic mountain erupted, forcing a temporary evacuation. Residents were transported to England for safety, experiencing a world radically different from the slow, measured life of the island. Yet most chose to return once the eruption subsided. Their decision was not merely practical,
It was a recognition that the rhythms of life on Tristan, though constrained, offered a form of belonging and rootedness impossible to replicate elsewhere. The choice to live amidst remoteness underscores a psychology that sees distance not as deprivation, but as protection and clarity. The weather itself shapes daily experience. Strong winds whip across the volcanic cliffs, carrying salt and mist that coat every surface. Rain arrives suddenly and often, accompanied by the relentless motion of the surrounding sea. Fog drifts inland from the Atlantic, softening edges and creating an ethereal quality across hills and valleys. Residents adapt through clothing, building placement, and timing of outdoor work. Each day is negotiated with the awareness that nature remains the dominant force. Yet within these constraints there is profound calm. The world is defined in part by predictability, in part by acceptance, and entirely by the slow rhythm of effort aligned with environmental conditions.
Social life on Tristan da Cunha is necessarily close-knit. With only a few hundred residents, relationships are multi-layered. Decision-making is communal. Disputes are resolved in gatherings that involve reflection, discussion, and consensus. Children grow up knowing everyone by name, learning skills from neighbors as much as from family. Knowledge is practical and experiential. How to repair a roof, how to predict weather from the wind and cloud patterns, how to fish from the rocky shore without overextending resources. Every generation carries both the memory and the responsibility of sustaining life on the island, a subtle but profound sense of continuity. The psychology of living in such isolation is unlike anywhere else on Earth. There is no concept of being just down the street from a city, no instant access to medical care, entertainment, or goods. Time stretches differently, measured by seasons, tides, and human necessity, rather than by social expectation or urban schedule. People learn patience, resilience, and a deep familiarity with small rhythms, the growth of a garden, the arrival of a ship, the changing light across cliffs. Solitude is not loneliness, it is immersion in a life where every movement, every observation carries significance and meaning. Every natural element becomes heightened by its context. The ocean is immense, its waves carrying both bounty and warning. The cliffs rise steeply, marking boundaries and vantage points. Vegetation is sparse yet hardy, clinging to rock faces and hillsides, a testament to resilience. Birds, seals, and other wildlife form an auditory and visual companion to humans, marking time and seasons in ways subtle but unmistakable. The island's geography fosters a quiet attentiveness, a form of awareness shaped by necessity and observation, teaching lessons about the relationship between humans and an environment that is utterly self-contained. Even daily life is an exercise in awareness. Collecting water, tending gardens, maintaining homes, preparing for rare supply arrivals, each task becomes a ritual of care and attention. Residents move deliberately, anticipating conditions and respecting limitations. There's a subtle poetry in these routines. Work is rhythmical, repetitive, yet imbued with purpose and attentiveness. Each act resonates, carrying weight in a context where missteps can have immediate consequences. Life is intimate, tactile, and immersive, lived in constant dialogue with the surrounding environment.
In Tristan da Cunha, isolation fosters a perspective that is rare. Distance from continents, from the bustle of modern cities, from the constant influx of information, allows the mind to settle. There is space for reflection, for noticing the subtle movements of wind and tide, for listening to the shifting patterns of clouds and waves. The environment shapes thought and behavior, and in doing so, teaches a calm attentiveness, a deliberate engagement with the world as it is, not as it could be elsewhere. Ahead, the journey moves to the final destination, a place more alien than earthly, where extremes in chemistry, landscape, and color challenge the imagination. This is a place that, despite being on our planet, seems to belong to another world entirely, a fitting conclusion to the exploration of Earth's most extraordinary habitats. The ocean continues its relentless presence, waves breaking against the volcanic cliffs with a measured insistence. Even in calm weather, the sound of the sea dominates, a constant reminder of the island's solitude and the vast distances that separate it from continents. The horizon stretches unbroken for thousands of miles, offering little sense of human proximity. To live here is to inhabit a space that feels simultaneously protected and exposed, where the mind adjusts to both the immense scale of nature and the intimacy of a small community. Isolation becomes a kind of peace, a rhythm measured by tides, wind, and sunlight, rather than deadlines or technology. Every arrival and departure carries weight. Supply ships are infrequent, sometimes delayed by storms or rough seas. When one approaches, it is an event marked by anticipation, preparation, and communal effort. Residents plan months in advance, storing food, fuel, and other necessities. Fishing and farming supplement supplies, ensuring that the community remains self-sufficient. Gardens are carefully tended despite the wind, crops rotated to preserve soil, and livestock maintained with precision. Daily routines, from collecting water to repairing homes, are informed by both necessity and an awareness of the fragile balance that sustains life in this extreme remoteness. There is no room for haste. Patience is a survival skill, and mindfulness becomes second nature.
Life here fosters a profound sense of connection and interdependence. Decisions affecting the community are discussed collectively, with each voice considered. Conflicts are resolved through dialogue, compromise, and reflection. Skills and knowledge are shared, ensuring that essential tasks can continue regardless of individual availability. Children grow up with a deep understanding of the environment and a strong sense of responsibility. They learn to navigate cliffs and coasts, to predict weather from subtle signs, and to contribute meaningfully to communal work. In such a setting, the line between personal and collective life blurs, creating bonds that are both intimate and essential for survival. The climate adds another layer to this isolation. Strong winds, frequent storms, and salt-laden air shape every aspect of living. Houses are built with durability in mind, raised slightly to avoid occasional flooding, reinforced to withstand gusts, and positioned to protect against landslides from steep volcanic slopes. Vegetation is sparse but resilient, clinging to rocky soil, while seabirds and marine life provide rhythm and continuity. Even the wind carries lessons. In its strength and patterns, residents read the day ahead, adjusting work and movement to suit the conditions. The environment becomes a guide, teaching awareness, adaptability, and the quiet art of observation. Historical events remind the community of both the fragility and resilience of their lives. The 1961 volcanic eruption forced residents to evacuate temporarily, experiencing a world far removed from Tristan's rhythms. Yet nearly all chose to return when it became possible, drawn by a connection that transcends practicality. The choice to live in such extreme isolation reflects a value system that prizes connection to place, to family, and to enduring rhythms over convenience. Life on Tristan da Cunha is not easy, but it is rich in ways measured by intimacy, observation, and shared experience. Danger exists in storms and sea, but it is met with preparedness, knowledge, and collective effort. Psychologically, isolation fosters reflection and resilience. Residents develop a keen awareness of the present moment, of the subtle changes in weather, tides, and animal behavior. Time is experienced differently, shaped by natural cycles rather than social urgency. Solitude is not synonymous with loneliness. It is immersion in a world scaled to human presence, where every observation and decision carries significance. The island's remoteness encourages mindfulness, patience, and deep engagement with both environment and community. People learn to value quiet, to see small changes, and to appreciate stability within extremes. Even simple activities, fishing, farming, tending gardens, take on a rhythm of meditation. Each task requires attention, measured effort, and awareness of surroundings. Children participate from an early age, observing elders and learning skills that combine practicality with a form of quiet artistry. Fishing is done with care and knowledge, gardens maintained with attention to soil, wind, and moisture. Meals are prepared from a combination of stored supplies, harvested produce, and fresh seafood, each reflecting the delicate balance between self-sufficiency and cooperation. The soundscape is dominated by wind and sea, punctuated by birds, the occasional dog, or human conversation. Silence in this context is not emptiness, but presence. It allows for reflection and attunement, a meditative engagement with life's essentials. Even storms, which can rage for days, are incorporated into the rhythm of living, teaching resilience and patience. Daily life is a constant negotiation with environmental extremes, yet within these parameters there is profound calm, a sense that life is sustained through attention, care, and deliberate action. As the sun sets over the cliffs, the Atlantic stretches endlessly, reflecting fading light and signaling the approach of night. Residents retreat to homes, fires crackle, and stories are shared. The weight of isolation is softened by community, by shared history, and by deep familiarity with place. Distance, which might seem like deprivation elsewhere, becomes a protective embrace, a slow and deliberate rhythm that allows space for observation, reflection, and quiet wonder. From Tristan da Cunha, the journey moves to its final destination, a place whose landscapes and colors seem almost alien, as though shaped by imagination rather than natural processes. It is a fitting conclusion to a journey across the extremes of Earth, reminding us that even in the familiar planet beneath our feet, there are places that challenge perception, expand understanding, and awaken a quiet awe that carries through both day and night.
The first glimpse of Lake Natron is almost impossible to forget. From the rim of the surrounding volcanic hills, the water stretches outward like a sheet of liquid fire, its surface shimmering in shades of deep red and orange beneath the hot Tanzanian sun. The air is heavy with heat, and a faint crust of salt glitters in the light, outlining the lake's irregular edges. The lake seems alive, not in the familiar rhythms of rivers or oceans, but in a surreal, almost otherworldly pulse. It glows, it steams, and it reflects a sky that itself is sharpened by the clarity of dry heat. This is a place that feels beyond time, beyond ordinary understanding, where life and danger exist in delicate, improbable balance. Lake Natron is caustic, an environment that would be immediately inhospitable to most forms of life. Its waters are saturated with sodium carbonate and other minerals, giving it a pH that can reach 12, comparable to household bleach. Temperatures rise to nearly 60 degrees Celsius in some areas, intensifying the harshness of the landscape. Water that is this alkaline is corrosive to skin, eyes, and even feathers of unwary animals. The edges of the lake are encrusted with vivid salt deposits that catch the light, turning the periphery into a surreal white frame against the molten reds of deeper water.
Steam rises in places where heat concentrates, and faint mineral odors hang in the air, sharp and unmistakable, mingling with the dry winds that sweep the nearby plains. Despite the apparent hostility, life has adapted in extraordinary ways. The lake's most famous visitors are the flamingos, which come in massive flocks to nest on its small salt islands. For these birds, Lake Natron provides a refuge, safe from predators and human intrusion, where the alkalinity and harsh conditions act as protection. Their nests are built carefully from mud and salt, and their eggs, delicate yet resilient, rest amid the shimmer of red waters. The contrast is striking, fragile creatures surviving in a place that appears, at first glance, entirely inhospitable. Observing these flamingos, one feels the strange intimacy of survival, the interplay between danger and opportunity, and the resilience of life in the most unlikely circumstances. Even more startling are the lake's petrified animals, a phenomenon that has captured the imagination of visitors and scientists alike. Animals that wander too close to the caustic water can be preserved by mineral deposits, their forms hardened as if turned to stone. The shapes are frozen in time, haunting and strangely beautiful. They lie in parts of the lake's edge, a reminder of both the harshness of the environment and the exacting rules of life here. Local communities have stories of spirits and forbidden shores, of creatures that disappeared or changed form upon entering the lake. These tales blend observation with myth, offering explanations for phenomena that challenge ordinary perception. The petrified birds, small mammals, and occasional reptiles become lessons etched in landscape and story, teaching respect for a place that is alive in extremes. Yet even within the apparent violence of the environment, there is life thriving at the microscopic level. Extremophile bacteria and algae inhabit the lake, flourishing in the heat and alkalinity. Their pigments give the water its vivid red and orange hues, and they form the basis of a delicate food web supporting flamingos and other wildlife. These microorganisms remind us that life can adapt in ways that seem impossible, transforming danger into opportunity. The lake is simultaneously lethal and nurturing, a paradox written in chemistry and biology. Observing it calmly, one begins to sense the subtle rules governing survival here. Temperature, pH, mineral concentration, and isolation all converge to create a habitat that is both selective and sustaining. The lake's surrounding landscape amplifies its alien qualities. Volcanic hills rise sharply around the water, their surfaces etched with ridges and gullies. Salt flats extend outward, hard and crystalline, catching light in dazzling arrays of reflection and shadow. The wind carries both the mineral scent of the lake and the heat of the sun-warmed plains, creating an atmosphere thick with sensory intensity, yet softened by the absence of human noise. In this stillness, one can hear the faint calls of distant flamingos, the whisper of wind across salt-encrusted rocks, and the subtle hiss of hot water meeting cooler air. The environment is extreme, yet there is calm in the observation, a quiet meditation on the power and strangeness of the natural world. Local communities regard the lake with a mixture of awe, respect, and wariness. Its shores are places to approach cautiously, its waters a boundary between the ordinary and the extraordinary. Folk tales speak of spirits inhabiting the red depths, of warnings passed down through generations about where to walk and where to linger. These stories are both practical and poetic, encoding knowledge about water chemistry, dangerous currents, and animal behavior in a form that endures. Even for the scientist or traveler, there is a need to move deliberately, to read the lake with attention, and to understand that its apparent calm hides a complexity that commands patience and respect. The visual impact of Lake Natron is profound. Its red waters reflect clouds and sun in patterns that shift with wind and light. Salt deposits create jagged textures that seem sculpted by unseen hands. The flamingos add motion and contrast, their pink and white forms tracing arcs across water and sky. Mineral-encrusted remains of other animals punctuate the landscape with strange, silent reminders of the lake's exacting rules. Observing these elements in combination, one experiences a sense of place that is otherworldly yet tangible, alien yet grounded in the physics and chemistry of the planet. It is a meditation on extremes, adaptation, and the artistry inherent in survival. Ahead, the journey will move gently toward closure, leaving behind extremes of temperature, isolation, precipitation, and alien chemistry. From these edges of Earth, one can begin to reflect on the balance between resilience and danger, between human life and the extraordinary environments that shape it, allowing the mind to settle into a slower, deeper rhythm of awareness and calm observation. As the day stretches across the lake, the sunlight intensifies the reds and oranges of the water, creating a shimmering, almost liquid fire across its surface. The flamingos move in delicate arcs, their reflections fragmented and multiplied by ripples. Observing them, one feels the paradox of Lake Natron, an environment so extreme that it could destroy, yet so precisely balanced that allows life to flourish in its own carefully defined niches. Each flamingo, each microbial bloom is a testament to adaptation, patience, and the extraordinary resilience of living beings shaped by conditions that challenge the imagination. The petrified animals remain a haunting presence. Their mineralized forms lie quietly along the edges, frozen in gestures of motion, a visual record of lives suddenly halted. These figures are reminders of the lake's power and impartiality. They are preserved not through narrative or legend, but through chemistry. Yet local stories have enveloped them in mythology. Children of nearby villages grow up learning the lake's boundaries, respecting its shores, and hearing tales of spirits that inhabit the red waters. This blending of observation, science, and myth creates a deep sense of awareness and reverence, teaching that life is sustained by attentiveness and respect for forces beyond human control.
The lake's extreme alkalinity does more than sculpt the landscape. It defines it. Water temperatures approach 60 degrees Celsius in some areas, and sodium carbonate deposits create textures and formations unlike any found elsewhere. Each mineral-encrusted shore, each shimmering salt flat forms a pattern of contrasts, sharp and soft, static and flowing, bright and muted. These elements interact with the wind, the sun, and the occasional rainfall to create a dynamic visual and sensory experience. The environment is alien, yet there is a quiet rhythm to it. Observers can notice subtle changes from hour to hour, shifts in color, temperature, or the movement of flocks, finding a meditative pace in the extremes. Microbial life thrives where few larger species can survive. These extremophiles produce pigments that color the lake, forming the foundation of a complex workweb. Without their presence, flamingos could not feed, and the unique balance of the lake would collapse. Life exists here as a delicate negotiation between chemistry, biology, and geology. Each species is adapted to the precise conditions, and small variations in pH, temperature, or mineral concentration can ripple across the ecosystem. Observing this interplay fosters a sense of attentiveness and understanding that life is both fragile and persistent, shaped by forces that often remain invisible yet profoundly influential. The surrounding landscape amplifies the sense of alienness. Volcanic hills rise steeply, their slopes etched with gullies and salt deposits. The air is hot, dry, and heavy with mineral scent, carrying the subtle hiss of water vapor and the distant calls of birds. Light glints off crystals and salt-encrusted rocks, creating shifting patterns that change with every moment of sun, shadow, and wind. Even the simplest action,
Walking along a path or watching a bird land becomes a meditation, an exercise in presence, observation, and quiet reflection. The extremity of the environment invites mindfulness, rewarding calm attention with details easily overlooked in more ordinary settings. Local communities maintain a cautious relationship with the lake. Its shores are approached deliberately, its waters respected and rarely disturbed. Folk tales about spirits and forbidden zones persist, carrying knowledge of water hazards, wildlife behavior, and seasonal shifts. The stories are practical, providing guidance for safety, but they also carry poetic and cultural significance, linking human awareness with the lake's remarkable physical properties. In this way, the lake teaches lessons about coexistence with extremes, about boundaries, attentiveness, and the need to harmonize human activity with the forces of nature. Evening brings a shift in color and atmosphere. The sun lowers, deepening reds into burgundy and gold. Shadows stretch across salt flats, volcanic slopes, and mineral crusts, softening the harshness of daytime glare. The flamingos settle on their islands, creating intricate patterns that mirror the lake's geometric incrustations. Wind slows slightly, and the air cools, carrying a faint metallic scent of minerals. In this hour, the lake's alienness transforms into a form of serene beauty, a place where danger and life coexist in harmony, and where observation invites quiet reflection rather than anxiety. As night approaches, the lake and its surroundings settle into a rhythm defined by temperature, wind, and the movements of birds and microorganisms. The landscape becomes less visually intense, yet every element, the red waters, salt flats, volcanic hills, and distant flamingos, remain vivid in memory. Lake Natron exemplifies the balance between extremity and resilience, between danger and sustenance. It offers a meditation on how environments shape life, demanding adaptation, attentiveness, and respect. Life here is both fragile and persistent, alien yet astonishingly vivid. From this final extreme, the journey gently draws to a close. Across the hottest deserts, the coldest tundras, the wettest valleys, the driest plains, the fiery volcanoes, the isolated islands, and the alien red waters of Lake Natron, the planet has revealed both danger and beauty, endurance and adaptation. These extremes remind us that life persists where conditions are harsh, that ecosystems thrive when perfectly balanced, and that the human experience is enriched by observing, understanding, and reflecting on the extraordinary environments of our world.
As our journey across the edges of the earth comes to a close, it is quiet now, the mind gently settling after days spent wandering through extremes. The hottest sands, the coldest snows, the relentless rains and endless droughts, the fires of volcanoes, the remote isolation of distant islands, and the alien glow of alkaline lakes, all of these places exist in their own rhythms, shaped by forces older than memory. And yet, in every corner of these extremes, life persists, finding ways to endure, to adapt, and sometimes to flourish where one might expect nothing at all. There is a strange harmony in this, a lesson whispered softly across landscapes both harsh and beautiful. Human hands and hearts find methods of survival, of comfort, of connection, whether it is building root bridges in monsoon valleys, tending gardens in dry desert soil, navigating ice-bound villages, or reading the subtle signs of a volcanic heartbeat. Life here moves deliberately, attuned to the environment, shaped by attentiveness, care, and creativity. Even in places that seem unforgiving, there is an intimacy, a patient rhythm, a quiet resilience that softens the edges of danger.
As you let your thoughts drift, consider the ways in which extremes remind us of the strength and subtlety of life. Every mountain, river, salt flat, and flamingo's nest carries a story of endurance. Every shadow, every ripple, every heat wave or gust of wind is a gentle prompt to notice, to reflect, and to appreciate the persistent miracle of being. And now, as the light fades and the quiet deepens, allow yourself to drift with the rhythm of these stories. Let them settle softly in your mind, carrying their calm, their wonder, and their quiet lessons into the spaces between waking and sleep. Let your breath slow, your thoughts settle, and your awareness rest as the planet's extremes, vast and ancient, cradle you gently into the night.